Hi guys, in this video I'm going to show you how you can analyze your sales data with pivot tables and pivot charts to improve your productivity. So I just got this report out of my system. I know that you can do the same, more like the report that you can pull out from the systems. Your CRM, your ERP are more or less the same. So in this case, let's analyze this data set here. Let's go through the headers first, and then we can have a quick look about the dimension and how big is this sales report. So I'm pretty sure that your report will share with me the same headers. So for example, the first header would be the item code or the SKU number, so where all the articles are listed. Then you might have an item description for the article, then the quantity sold, this total sales value associated to this line. You will surely have a date, a customer number, a sales order number, and a sales channel. The report I'm using right now belongs to a specific time frame. So I'm looking at the sales for April and May 2022. And as I mentioned before, we have the sales channel. So what I'm pulling out from the system are sales coming from my website, so direct to consumer sales and retailer sales. Also, just to give you a bit of background about the items I'm analyzing at this point in time, the product that the company is selling are consumer staples, so essential goods mainly. You can think about Unilever and Procter & Gamble products. And also, as you can see from here, if we want to analyze the database, we can go to the very bottom line and you will see that the system, the database, you will see that the database has indeed more than 4,000 lines. But you don't have to be scary about that because after this video, you will be able to analyze even bigger database. And with bigger database, I refer to hundreds of thousands of lines. Okay, cool. So let's focus on the scope of the exercise today. What we want to find and analyze is the weekly sales by item. So you want to understand how many items and which item were sold by week in each week. And the second point will be evaluating the weekly sales value by item. So let's crack on with the first part of the exercise. To do the weekly sales by item, we will need to use a pivot table. So in order to create the first report, since we want to aggregate the data on a weekly basis, we will need to introduce one additional column here, so we can call it week. I'm just copying the format, and basically what we want to do is find the associated week that belongs to this date. So to do that, we can use the ISO week number formula. So what the system does with this formula, if we specify a date, the system will return back, Excel will return back the week associated with this date. So once you do that, you can simply drag down the formula, and as you scroll down, you will see that the week is changing. So the 20th of April in this case belong to week 16, and so on and so forth. So now we have all the information that we need to create our report. What we can do is select the entire table range and create the pivot table. So as you can see, I'm quickly selecting the entire data set. You can do it as well if you want to do it in this very fast way. What you have to do is press Ctrl and Shift on your laptop, and then if you press the right arrow, the system Excel will select the first line, and then if you keep holding Control and Shift and you press down, the system will select the entire database. At this point, you can go on the Insert ribbon and press Pivot Table. Now this message pops up, and you can see that the table range is already selected, so your source data is already there, and then you can choose whether you want to move and create the pivot table into a new worksheet or into an existing worksheet. In this instance, I'll go ahead and select a new worksheet. So this is how the new worksheet look like. On the right side of the worksheet, we have the pivot table fields, and you can see there's a list here, and this list is nothing but a representation of the headers that are from the report. As you can see, the first one is item code SKU, then you have item description, so on and so forth. So an additional tip here, when you want to create a pivot table, you will need to make sure that all your headers are filled with the name, so you can't leave a header blank like this. If you try to create a pivot table selecting this data set down to the bottom, the system will get angry and won't make you do it. So let's go back to the pivot table right now. As you can see, on the very bottom part of the fields, we have 4 different squares where you can simply drag and drop the relevant field. Now to create the first report, the weekly sales by item, so in quantity, what we can do is simply dragging and dropping the item code into the rows, and the system will return the list of all the items into the database. And as you can see, the system is listing only once the articles. This because the pivot table is a table that aggregates items of a more extensive table together. Hence, it helps to determine sums, average, and other statistics. So once you drag and drop the item code here, you can select the week and drag the week in the column label. So you can see that now the system is returning the week number 13, 14, 15, and so on. And then finally, you can simply drag and drop the quantity sold into the table. I would say that this is really, really amazing, really, really quick. And pivot table that's why pivot table are so powerful, because in 3 simple steps we just dragged and dropped all the relevant field, and the system made the sum for each week, for each item, for each single item for us. Also, the system added already the grand total by week, by article, but if you scroll down, the system did already the grand total for the column itself. So let's check this just to make sure that the system did everything correctly. So if I select the entire sales from week 13 to week 22 for article 3, as you can see, the sum of this value is indeed 71. Same if I do for the entire week 13. If I select all the data, I can see the sum is 166, and this is what the system returned already. A couple of things about this table. It's easy for everyone to understand, you know, the sales, the quantity. However, I'm pretty much sure that no one knows the article by heart. So we know that article 33 was sold 15 times in week 14 and so on, but we don't know what this article is. However, in our field list, we do have the item description. So if we simply drag and drop the item description below the item code and SKUs, the system will populate the table with all the item description. And to be fair, I don't like this representation here, because it looks like that the data are duplicated. we can fix that. It's very easy to do. What you can do is simply right click on the first part of the table, so on the first column of the table, then you go on pivot table option, you click on display, and then you select the classic pivot table layout. Okay, we just need to do an additional step. As you can see now, the description is next to the article code, is not underneath, but this time underneath we have the total. It might be useful sometime, but in this case, this occasion, we don't need the subtotal. So what we can do, we can simply right click on any of the total and untick this subtotal item code SKU, and voila, the subtotal is gone right now, and now the table looks more clear, more tidy, and as you can see, we have the article number here, the item description here, and all the relevant sales. Okay, cool. So now we've just finished to create the first report, and now we can use the same exact steps that we've just used to create the second report. So let's go back to the sales, to the original database. What we want to see is the weekly sales value by item. So to create this report, it's going to be exactly the same. You're going to leverage the exact things that we just saw in the previous one. So first thing first, we can hold Control Shift and press right to select the first line, and then keep holding Control Shift and press down to select the entire database. So now you move to Insert, and then you click Pivot Table. Table range is already selected. Same as we did before. We want to create this report in a new worksheet, and then we click OK. So we do have the same layout, so it's easier for us to understand that we still need to drag and drop the item code in the rows. Then we will bring the week in the column, and then this time, instead of dragging and dropping the quantity sold, we want the total sales value into the values. And finally, we drag and drop the item description. As you can see, this time the table looks really messy, and this because of the default layout that Excel is selecting for us. We can change it. We just need to right click here and then go back to pivot table option, click on display and select classic pivot table layout, and this will make sure that the item description is next to the article number. Also, we can remove the article total, so we can simply right click and remove the subtotal item code, and then the subtotal is gone. What we can do right now, since those values here are actually in pound or dollars or euros, depending on your report, we can change the format. So how do we do that? We simply move to the values, we left click, we go on value field settings, and then we click on number format. Then we select currency, and then we select which symbol we want to use. This time, for me, I was using pounds, so I'll select pound and I click OK, and OK once again. And there we go. Now we have our table that shows the revenue by week for each article. As you can see, we do have the grand total for each item in the time window, and also we have the grand total for each week.